Celeste Morgan moves through the luxurious Vale penthouse like a ghost, invisible to the wealthy couple she serves, until the day CEO Grayson Vale truly sees her for the first time. Trapped in a loveless marriage built on appearances, Grayson finds himself drawn to the quiet Maid whose gentle humming and genuine warmth awaken something he thought was lost forever. As their forbidden connection deepens, they must navigate the dangerous waters of class differences, a vindictive wife, and a society that would never accept their love. This is a story of hidden hearts, the courage to reach across impossible divides, and the transformative power of being truly seen by someone who loves you for who you really are. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Vale penthouse, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Celeste Morgan adjusted her simple black uniform and tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. At 27, she carried herself with quiet dignity, moving through the luxury apartment with practiced efficiency. She heard the sharp click of heels against marble and straightened her posture. Vivian Vale appeared, draped in a designer outfit that probably cost more than Celeste made in 3 months. "I need the penthouse spotless by 7, Vivian said without making eye contact. "We're hosting the charity board tonight." "Yes, Mrs. Vale," Celeste replied, keeping her voice steady and professional. Vivian glanced at her watch, diamond-encrusted, of course, and frowned. "And make sure my husband's study is presentable. He's been living like a bachelor in there." As Vivian strutted toward the elevator, Celeste couldn't help but notice how the woman never asked how she was doing. 2 years working in this penthouse, and Mrs. Vale barely knew her name. The elevator doors closed, and Celeste released a breath she didn't know she was holding. Alone again in the vast apartment, she returned to dusting the living room shelves filled with books that looked like they'd never been opened. She hummed softly, an old gospel tune her grandmother used to sing, as she worked her way through the apartment. When she reached Mr. Vale's study, she knocked gently, though she knew he was at the office. It was just her habit, respecting people's spaces. The room was neat except for the desk, where papers were scattered in organized chaos. As she carefully arranged the documents into a tidy stack, a photo caught her eye. It was of Mr. Vale, Grayson, much younger, maybe in college, laughing openly with friends on what looked like a camping trip. She'd never seen him smile like that in person. That was a lifetime ago. The deep voice startled her, and she nearly dropped the frame. Grayson Vale stood in the doorway of his study, his tall frame filling the space. At 34, he was at the height of his power, CEO of Vale Industries, a self-made empire that dominated New York's business scene. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vale," Celeste said, quickly setting down the photo. "I didn't mean to pry." "It's not prying if it's sitting out in the open," he said, loosening his tie as he walked into the room. He looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. "Would you like some coffee, sir?" she asked, slipping back into her professional role. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Celeste felt something shift in the air between them. "What were you humming earlier?" he asked instead of answering her question. Celeste blinked, surprised that he'd noticed. "Just an old song my grandmother taught me." "It was nice," he said simply. Then, after a moment, "Coffee would be great, thank you." As she prepared his coffee in the kitchen, black with 1 sugar the way he liked it, Celeste tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach. Mr. Vale had never really noticed her before, not like that. When she returned to the study, he was standing by the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. "Your coffee, Mr. Vale." He turned and took the cup, their fingers brushing briefly. "Grayson," he said. "Excuse me?" "My name. It's Grayson. When it's just us in the apartment, I'd prefer if you called me by my name." Celeste hesitated. "That wouldn't be proper, Mr. Vale." A small smile touched his lips. "Nothing about my life feels proper anymore, Celeste." The way he said her name, like he'd been saying it in his head for a long time, made her pulse quicken. "Will Mrs. Vale be returning soon?" she asked, trying to redirect the conversation. Something darkened in his eyes. "No, she has lunch with her friends, then shopping, then probably drinks. She'll be back just in time to play hostess tonight." Celeste nodded, unsure how to respond. "Do you enjoy working here, Celeste?" he asked suddenly. "Yes, sir, Mr. Vale. The job pays well and the hours work with my night classes." His eyebrows raised slightly. "You're in school?" "Business administration," she said, feeling oddly shy. "Just part-time." "That's impressive," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "What do you want to do with your degree?" No one had asked her that in a long time. "Open my own business someday." Something small, but mine. Grayson nodded, a genuine smile warming his features. I started small too. Everyone forgets that part. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Employer and employee, yes, but somehow more like two people seeing each other clearly for the first time. The moment broke when his phone rang. Grayson sighed, setting down his coffee cup. Back to reality, he muttered, reaching for his phone. Celeste took that as her cue to leave, quietly closing the door behind her. As she continued with her cleaning, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Over the next few weeks, Celeste noticed Grayson was home more often during her cleaning hours. Sometimes he'd work from his study, the door left purposely ajar. Other times he'd read in the living room while she dusted nearby shelves. They began to talk, small conversations at first. He'd ask about her classes. She'd recommend a book she'd noticed on his shelf that she'd read. Simple things. One rainy Tuesday, Celeste was rearranging books in the library when Grayson appeared with 2 mugs of tea. I thought you might like a break, he said, offering her one of the mugs. Celeste hesitated before accepting it. Thank you, Mr. Vale. Grayson, he reminded her gently. She smiled slightly. Grayson. They sat on opposite ends of the plush sofa, listening to the rain tap against the windows. You organize my books by color, he observed, looking at the shelves. Celeste felt her cheeks warm. I noticed you never seem to know where anything is. I thought a system might help. It does, he said, smiling. I found 3 books I thought I'd lost. I'm glad. You notice things, don't you? Grayson said, studying her. Things other people miss. Celeste sipped her tea before answering. My grandmother always said that listening and watching are gifts. They help you understand people. And do you understand me? He asked, his voice lower. Their eyes met over their tea mugs, and Celeste felt that same electricity from weeks before. I think you're lonely, she said honestly, then immediately regretted her boldness. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. But Grayson didn't look offended. If anything, he looked relieved. You're right, he said simply. I am. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed, breaking the moment. I should finish the library, Celeste said, setting down her mug. Grayson nodded, standing. Thank you for the tea break. As he walked away, Celeste couldn't help but notice the weight that seemed to press on his shoulders, the burden of a man who had everything on paper, but nothing that really mattered. That evening, as Celeste prepared to leave, she heard shouting from the master bedroom. She tried not to listen, but Vivienne's sharp voice carried through the penthouse. You missed the Wilson dinner deliberately, Vivienne accused. I told you I had work, Grayson replied, his voice controlled but tight. Work? Or were you just avoiding me again? Vivienne's laugh was cold. Do you know how it looked when I showed up alone? Is that all you care about? How things look? Don't be naive, Grayson. Of course that's what matters in our world. Celeste quietly gathered her things, wanting to leave before she heard more of their private argument. But as she reached the elevator, Grayson emerged from the hallway, his face strained. Leaving for the day? He asked, trying to sound normal. Yes, Mr. Vale, she replied, reverting to formality. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but the sound of Vivienne's heels clicking down the hallway stopped him. We'll finish this discussion later, Vivienne snapped as she entered the living room, barely acknowledging Celeste's presence. She reached for her purse. I'm going out. It's pouring rain, Grayson pointed out. I'll take a car, Vivienne replied dismissively, pressing the elevator button. After Vivienne left, an uncomfortable silence filled the apartment. Celeste shifted awkwardly. I should go too, she said quietly. Grayson ran a hand through his dark hair. I'm sorry you had to hear that. It's not my place. Would you stay? He interrupted, then quickly added, just for a little while. I could use the company. Every sensible part of Celeste's brain told her to leave. This was her employer, a married man asking her to stay after an argument with his wife, but the look in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored something deep inside her, made her hesitate. I could make dinner, she offered as a compromise. You probably haven't eaten. Relief washed over his face. That would be nice. Thank you. In the kitchen, Celeste worked efficiently, making a simple pasta dish with ingredients she found in the refrigerator. Grayson sat at the counter watching her. Where did you learn to cook? He asked. My grandmother raised me after my mom died, Celeste explained, stirring the sauce. She said cooking was love made visible. She sounds wise. She was. Celeste smiled at the memory. She worked as a housekeeper for the same family for 40 years. Taught me everything about hard work and dignity. Is she still? She passed 3 years ago, Celeste said, the familiar ache returning. That's when I decided to go back to school. She always wanted that for me. Grayson nodded, understanding in his eyes. My father worked 3 jobs to put me through college. He didn't live to see Vale Industries, but everything I do is because of him. As they ate dinner together at the kitchen island, the rain pounding against the windows, Celeste realized how strangely comfortable this felt, talking with Grayson, sharing stories about their lives. It shouldn't feel this natural, but it did. "This is the best meal I've had in months," Grayson said, finishing his pasta. "It's just spaghetti," Celeste laughed. "No, it's more than that. It's—" He seemed to search for the right words. "It's made with care." Their eyes met across the counter, and this time neither looked away. "Vivian and I haven't really been married for a long time," Grayson said suddenly, his voice low. "Not in any way that matters." Celeste felt her heart racing. "Mr. Vale, Grayson, I should go." "I know," he said, not moving. "I know you should." The rain fell harder outside, thunder rumbling in the distance. "The storm's getting worse," he observed. "Do you want me to call you a car?" "I'll be fine," she said, standing to clear their plates. "I take the subway." Grayson frowned. "At least let me lend you an umbrella." He disappeared into a closet and returned with a large black umbrella. As he handed it to her, their fingers touched, lingering longer than necessary. "Thank you for dinner," he said softly, "and for listening." "Good night, Grayson," Celeste replied, stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, she leaned against the wall, her heart pounding. Whatever was happening between them was dangerous. She knew better. Her own mother had been the other woman to a married man who never chose her. Celeste had promised herself she would never make the same mistake. Yet as the elevator descended, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Grayson had looked at her, like she was the only real thing in his carefully constructed world. The next few days, Celeste tried to maintain a professional distance. She cleaned efficiently, spoke politely when Grayson was home, and left as soon as her hours were complete. But she could feel his eyes following her, sense the words he wasn't saying. One afternoon, while Celeste was arranging fresh flowers in the living room, Vivienne swept in with shopping bags, a friend in tow. "And this is our penthouse," Vivienne was saying, gesturing grandly. "Grayson wanted something in Tribeca, but I insisted on Central Park views." Her friend, a thin blonde woman dripping in jewelry, nodded appreciatively. "It's divine, Vivi." Vivienne noticed Celeste and waved dismissively. "You can finish that later. We need the living room." "Yes, Mrs. Vale," Celeste replied, gathering her things. As she moved toward the kitchen, she overheard Vivienne's friend whisper, "Your maid is quite pretty." "Is she?" Vivienne replied, sounding genuinely surprised. "I hardly noticed the help." The casual cruelty of the comment stung, but Celeste kept her expression neutral as she slipped away. In the kitchen, she found Grayson pouring himself a glass of water. "I see my wife is home," he said, his voice tight. Celeste nodded. "With a friend, they're in the living room." "Of course they are." He sighed, then looked at her more closely. "Are you okay? You seem upset." "It's nothing," Celeste said quickly. Grayson set down his glass and moved closer. "It's not nothing. Tell me." The genuine concern in his voice broke something loose in her. "It's just, sometimes I feel invisible in this house." "Not to me," Grayson said softly. "Never to me." They stood there in the kitchen, too close, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. From the living room, Vivienne's laughter rang out, shrill and false. Grayson reached out, his fingers brushing against Celeste's hand. "You're the most real thing in my life right now." Before Celeste could respond, the kitchen door swung open. Vivienne stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to cold calculation as she took in the scene. "Grayson, darling, I didn't know you were home," she said, her eyes flicking between them. "We're going to need drinks for Margot and me." "I'll get them," Celeste said quickly, moving away from Grayson. "No need," Vivienne said with a brittle smile. "My husband can play bartender. You can go back to whatever you were doing." The implication in her tone was clear. Celeste felt her cheeks burn as she gathered her cleaning supplies. "I'll finish the flowers tomorrow, Mrs. Vale," she said, keeping her voice steady. As she left the kitchen, she heard Vivienne's cold whisper to Grayson, "Really, darling, the maid? How cliché." Celeste's hands trembled as she collected her purse from the staff closet. She needed to leave, to clear her head. This job was becoming too complicated, too dangerous for her heart. But as she waited for the elevator, Grayson appeared in the hallway. "Celeste, wait," he said, his voice urgent. "What?" Vivienne implied. "It's not like that." "Isn't it?" Celeste asked, finally meeting his eyes. "What is it then?" The elevator arrived with a soft ding. "I don't know," Grayson admitted, his expression torn. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel awake. Celeste stepped into the elevator. I can't do this, Grayson. I won't be that woman. As the doors began to close, he placed his hand between them, stopping them. What if I told you my marriage was over long before I met you, that Vivian and I are just keeping up appearances? It doesn't matter, Celeste said, though her heart ached at his words. You're still married, and I'm still your maid. He withdrew his hand, and the doors closed between them. Celeste leaned against the elevator wall, closing her eyes. She had spent her whole life watching her mother wait for a man who would never choose her. She had promised herself she would never make the same mistake. But as the elevator descended, taking her away from Grayson, she wondered if she was already in too deep. The following week brought heavy rain to New York City. Celeste arrived at the Vale penthouse to find a note from Vivian, stating she was in Paris for a fashion show and would return in 5 days. The apartment felt different without Vivian's cold presence, warmer somehow despite the gloomy weather outside. Celeste worked through her usual routine, trying not to think about whether Grayson would be home. Around noon, the elevator chimed, and Grayson appeared, rain dripping from his coat. "You're here," he said, sounding relieved. "It's Tuesday," Celeste replied simply. "I'm always here on Tuesdays." Grayson hung up his wet coat. "I left a meeting early. The rain, it reminded me of something." Celeste waited, her heart beating too fast. "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" he asked. "Not as my employee, as Celeste." She should say no. She knew she should. "Grayson, please," he said, stepping closer. "Vivian is gone for the week. Just one dinner where we can talk honestly." The rain pounded against the windows, filling the silence between them. "One dinner," Celeste finally agreed. "Just to talk." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you." That evening, Celeste finished her work and was preparing to leave to change clothes when Grayson emerged from his study. "Don't go," he said. "I ordered food from that Italian place on 57th. It should be here soon." "I'm still in my uniform," Celeste protested. Grayson smiled, that rare, genuine smile she'd only seen in the old photograph. "You look beautiful," he said simply. The food arrived, and they ate at the dining table. Not in the kitchen this time, but in the formal dining room with its view of the rainy city. Grayson opened a bottle of wine, and they talked, really talked, about their lives, their dreams, the paths that had led them to this moment. "How did you end up with Vivian?" Celeste asked, the wine making her bolder. Grayson swirled the red liquid in his glass. "We met when I was just starting out. Her family had connections I needed." He paused, looking ashamed. "That sounds terrible, doesn't it?" "It sounds honest," Celeste replied. "I thought I loved her once," he continued. "Or maybe I loved the idea of her. But we became different people. Or maybe we were always different and just didn't want to see it." Thunder rumbled outside and the rain intensified. "What about you?" Grayson asked. "Has there been anyone special?" Celeste looked down at her plate. "No one serious. My mother. She spent her life loving a man who belonged to someone else. I watched what that did to her." Understanding dawned in Grayson's eyes. "That's why you pulled away from me." "I won't be someone's secret," Celeste said firmly. "I deserve more than that." "You do," Grayson agreed. "You deserve everything." After dinner, they moved to the living room. The storm outside had knocked out power in parts of the city, and the Manhattan skyline was a patchwork of light and darkness. "Tell me about your grandmother," Grayson said as they sat on the sofa, now closer than before. "The one who taught you to cook." Celeste smiled at the memory. "Her name was Esther. She was the strongest person I've ever known. Raised me by herself after my mom died when I was 8. She sounds amazing." She was. She wore this old locket every day with a picture of my grandfather inside. He died young, but she said true love doesn't end. It just changes form. As she spoke, Celeste reached for her neck out of habit, then frowned. "What's wrong?" Grayson asked. "My necklace. My grandmother's locket. I always wear it, but—" She stood up, searching her pockets. "I must have lost it today while cleaning." "We'll find it," Grayson assured her, standing as well. "Where did you work today?" They searched the apartment together, checking all the rooms Celeste had cleaned. The missing locket brought an unexpected intimacy as they looked under furniture and behind cushions. "Maybe in the study," Grayson suggested, after they'd searched the living room. "You were dusting the shelves in there this morning." In the study, Celeste carefully checked around the bookshelves while Grayson looked near his desk. "I'm sorry," she said, growing frustrated. "It must have fallen somewhere." "We'll find it," Grayson repeated gently. "It matters to you, so we'll find it." His words, the simple understanding of what the locket meant to her, made Celeste pause. No one had cared about what mattered to her in a long time. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. Suddenly the lights went out, plunging the penthouse into darkness. "Power's out," Grayson said, his voice close in the dark. "I have candles somewhere." He fumbled in a drawer, and soon a match flared, lighting a candle on his desk. In the warm glow, his face looked different. Younger somehow, the hard lines of his CEO persona softened. "Better?" he asked. "Yes," Celeste replied, though she wasn't just talking about the light. They stood facing each other in the candle-lit study, the storm raging outside. Something had changed between them, something neither could deny any longer. "Celeste," Grayson said, her name like a prayer on his lips. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I need to tell you something." She waited, her heart pounding. "I love her less than the silence in our home," he confessed, his voice breaking slightly. "But I love you more than I have words for, and I don't know what to do with that." The honesty of his words hit her like a physical force. Celeste took a step back, shaking her head. "You married her," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "And I'm not a secret to be buried in your guilt." Grayson didn't try to touch her, but his eyes never left hers. "What if I told you I'm going to end my marriage? Not for you, though you've shown me what I've been missing, but because it's been over for years." "I can't be the reason," Celeste insisted. "You're not the reason," he said. "You're the clarity, the mirror that showed me what my life had become." Another flash of lightning illuminated his face. Earnest, vulnerable, more real than she'd ever seen him. "I should go," Celeste said finally. "In this storm?" Grayson looked toward the window where rain lashed against the glass. "Stay. The guest room is yours if you want it. No expectations." Celeste hesitated, torn between what her head told her was right and what her heart wanted. "Just as friends," Grayson added softly. "I respect you too much to ask for more." In that moment, watching the candlelight flicker across his face, Celeste made her decision. "I'll stay," she said. "But this can't happen again. Tomorrow I go back to being your maid and you go back to being Mr. Vale." Grayson nodded, though the pain in his eyes was evident. "If that's what you want." "It's what has to be," Celeste replied, though her heart argued otherwise. As she followed him to the guest room, candle in hand, Celeste wondered if she was making the right choice. She had promised herself she wouldn't repeat her mother's mistakes, wouldn't love a man who belonged to someone else. But as Grayson wished her good night, his hand briefly touching hers as he passed her a set of clean towels, she realized it might already be too late. She was falling for Grayson Vale, and there was nothing simple about that at all. Morning light filtered through the unfamiliar curtains, waking Celeste from a restless sleep. For a moment she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The storm, the power outage, Grayson's confession, and her decision to stay in the guest room of the Vale penthouse. She sat up quickly, checking the time on her phone. It was earlier than she usually arrived for work, but late enough that Grayson might already be awake. She needed to leave before things became even more complicated. After washing her face and straightening her uniform from yesterday, Celeste quietly opened the guest room door. The apartment was silent. Maybe Grayson was still asleep. She tiptoed toward the living room, intending to gather her purse and slip out unnoticed. But as she passed the kitchen, she found Grayson already there, making coffee. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle. He was wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, so different from his usual business attire that Celeste had to look twice. "Good morning," she replied, suddenly self-conscious. "I should go. At least have some coffee first," he offered, holding out a mug. "It's still early." Against her better judgment, Celeste accepted the coffee and sat at the kitchen counter. An awkward silence settled between them. "About last night," they both began at the same time, then stopped. Grayson smiled slightly. "You first." Celeste took a deep breath. "What happened last night? What was said? We need to forget it. I work for you and Mrs. Vale. That's all this can be." Something flickered in Grayson's eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. "If that's what you want." "It's what's right," Celeste insisted, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. Grayson nodded slowly. "I understand, but I meant what I said. My marriage to Vivian has been over for a long time. That has nothing to do with you." "Then why stay with her?" Celeste asked, before she could stop herself. Grayson stared into his coffee. "Habit? Convenience? The company's image?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. Fear of being alone, maybe. The honesty in his voice made Celeste's heart ache. This wasn't the calculated CEO the world knew, but a man trapped in a life that no longer fit. "I should go home and change," she said softly. I'll be back at my regular time. Of course. Grayson stood as she did, keeping a respectful distance. Celeste, He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Thank you for the company during the storm. As Celeste rode the elevator down to the lobby, she pressed her hands against her cheeks, feeling the warmth there. She had meant what she said. They needed to go back to a professional relationship. But the image of Grayson in the morning light, vulnerable and real, stayed with her all the way home. The next few days passed in a strange dance of formality. Celeste arrived at her usual time, cleaned the penthouse with her usual efficiency, and spoke to Grayson with polite professionalism when their paths crossed. He, in turn, kept his distance, addressing her as Ms. Morgan when Vivienne was present, and barely looking at her when they were alone. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like loss. On Friday afternoon, Celeste was organizing the linen closet when she heard Vivienne's voice from the master bedroom. I know you've been avoiding these events, Grayson, she was saying, her tone sharp. The Martin Gala is too important to miss. I have a meeting that night, Grayson replied, his voice flat. Reschedule it, Vivienne snapped. This is about appearances. We need to be seen together. Is that all our marriage is to you? Appearances? Vivienne laughed, the sound brittle. Don't be naive. It's always been about appearances. That's why it worked. And if it's not working anymore? Grayson asked, his voice so quiet Celeste had to strain to hear. There was a long pause before Vivienne spoke again. Don't say things you'll regret, darling. We both have too much to lose. The conversation ended with the sharp click of Vivienne's heels moving away. Celeste quickly busied herself with folding towels as Grayson emerged from the bedroom, his expression stormy. He paused when he saw her, clearly wondering if she'd overheard. Celeste kept her eyes on her work, pretending not to notice him. Ms. Morgan, he said formally. Mr. Vale, she replied, not looking up. He stood there a moment longer, as if waiting for something, then continued down the hallway to his study. The door closed with a decisive click. Celeste released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The tension in the penthouse was becoming unbearable. Maybe it was time to look for another job, somewhere she could forget about Grayson Vale and these feelings she shouldn't be having. As she finished with the linen closet, her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Tanya. Coffee after work? I have news. Grateful for the distraction, Celeste texted back her agreement. She needed some normal in her life right now. Later, at a small cafe 3 blocks from the Vale building, Celeste listened as Tanya chatted excitedly about her new promotion. It felt good to focus on someone else's life, to be away from the charged atmosphere of the penthouse. So that's enough about me, Tanya said, stirring her latte. How's life with the rich and famous? Mrs. Vale still treating you like furniture? Celeste gave a tight smile. Nothing's changed. Tanya raised an eyebrow. You sure? You seem different lately. Distracted. Just tired, Celeste lied. My night classes are getting harder. Tanya said, clearly not convinced. And it has nothing to do with Mr. Tall, Dark and CEO. Celeste nearly choked on her coffee. What are you talking about? Oh, come on, Tanya laughed. I've seen him in those business magazines. Grayson Vale is hot in that serious, brooding way. You can't tell me you haven't noticed. He's my boss, Celeste said firmly. And he's married. Doesn't mean you can't look, Tanya teased. Then, seeing Celeste's expression, she became more serious. Wait, did something happen? No, Celeste said too quickly. Nothing happened. Tanya leaned forward, lowering her voice. Celeste Morgan, I've known you since high school. I know when you're lying. Celeste stared into her coffee cup. It's complicated. Complicated how? Before Celeste could answer, her attention was caught by a familiar figure entering the cafe. Grayson Vale, without his suit jacket, looking more casual than she'd ever seen him at work. That's him, she whispered to Tanya. Don't look. Of course, Tanya immediately turned to look. Damn, she breathed. The pictures don't do him justice. Celeste sank lower in her seat, hoping Grayson wouldn't notice her. But as he collected his coffee from the counter, his eyes scanned the cafe and landed directly on her. Surprise registered on his face, followed by something warmer. After a moment's hesitation, he walked toward their table. Ms. Morgan, he said, his formal tone at odds with the look in his eyes. I didn't expect to see you here. Mr. Vale, Celeste replied, her mouth suddenly dry. This is my friend, Tanya Wilson. Tanya extended her hand, grinning. Nice to meet you, Mr. Vale. Celeste has told me so much about working for you. Grayson shook her hand, one eyebrow raised slightly. All good things, I hope. Oh, absolutely, Tanya said, with a mischievous smile that made Celeste want to kick her under the table. An awkward silence fell. "Well, I should let you enjoy your coffee," Grayson said finally. "Have a good evening, ladies." As he walked away, Tanya leaned across the table. "Oh, my God, the way he looked at you." "Stop it," Celeste hissed. "No, seriously," Tanya insisted. "That man is definitely interested in more than your dusting skills." "It's not like that," Celeste protested, but her burning cheeks betrayed her. Tanya's eyes widened. "Something did happen. Tell me everything right now." Celeste sighed, knowing her friend wouldn't let this go. "Nothing happened exactly. We just talked during the storm last week." "Talked? That's it?" "Yes, that's it," Celeste said firmly. "And it can't be anything more. He's married, Tanya. You know how I feel about that." Tanya's expression softened. "Because of your mom. I watched her waste years loving a man who kept promising to leave his wife, but never did," Celeste said, the old pain resurfacing. "I won't make that mistake." "Maybe he's different," Tanya suggested gently. "It doesn't matter if he is," Celeste replied. "I won't be that woman. I won't be someone's secret." Tanya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I get it. Just be careful with your heart, okay?" Celeste nodded, but she wondered if it was already too late for that. The following Tuesday, Celeste arrived at the Vale penthouse to find a note from Vivian saying she was at a spa for the day. The apartment was quiet, and Celeste assumed Grayson was at the office. She welcomed the solitude, a chance to work without the tension that now filled the air whenever she and Grayson were in the same room. As she dusted the bookshelves in the living room, she hummed softly, another of her grandmother's old songs. The familiar melody calmed her, bringing back memories of simpler times. "That's beautiful," Celeste startled, nearly dropping her duster. Grayson stood in the doorway of the living room watching her. "Mr. Vale," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I didn't know you were home." "I had a conference call," he explained. "Just finished." Celeste nodded and returned to her dusting, trying to ignore the weight of his gaze. "Celeste," he said softly, using her first name for the first time in days. "Can we talk? Really talk?" She turned to face him, keeping the bookshelf between them like a barrier. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," he said, and something in his voice, a raw honesty, made her hesitate. "5 minutes," she conceded. "That's all." Grayson nodded and gestured toward the sofa. Celeste sat on the edge, her posture stiff. He sat at the other end, respecting her need for distance. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began, "about going back to a professional relationship." "It's for the best," Celeste said, though the words felt hollow. "Is it?" Grayson challenged gently. "Because I've spent the last week trying to pretend I don't feel what I feel, and it's not working." Celeste's heart raced. "Mr. Vale." "Grayson," he corrected. "Please." She took a deep breath. "Grayson, I meant what I said. I won't be the other woman. I saw what that did to my mother, waiting for a man who never chose her." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "That's why you pulled away." "I have to," she said simply. Grayson leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I'm not asking you to be the other woman. I'm telling you I'm going to end my marriage." Celeste shook her head. "Don't say that. Not because of me. Not because of you," he insisted. "Because it's already over. Has been for years. Vivian and I are barely more than business partners now. Then why stay?" Grayson ran a hand through his hair. Complicated legal agreements. The company's image. Fear of change, maybe. He looked directly into her eyes. "But none of that matters anymore. Meeting you, knowing you, has shown me what I've been missing." Celeste wanted to believe him, but she'd heard promises before, through her mother's tears. "I can't be part of this," she said, standing. "I think I should look for another job." "No," Grayson said quickly, rising as well. "Please don't. I won't pressure you. I just wanted you to know the truth." Before Celeste could respond, the elevator chimed. They both froze, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "That must be Vivian," Grayson said, stepping back. "She wasn't supposed to be home until dinner." Celeste quickly picked up her duster, resuming her work as Vivian's voice echoed through the apartment. "Grayson, are you home?" "In the living room," he called back, his voice suddenly formal. Vivian appeared, looking fresh from her spa day. She paused, taking in the scene. Celeste dusting, Grayson standing awkwardly in the middle of the room. "Am I interrupting something?" she asked, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. "Not at all," Grayson replied smoothly. "I was just telling Ms. Morgan about the dinner party next week. We'll need extra help." Vivian's gaze lingered on Celeste for a moment too long. "Of course. I'll leave the details to you. She turned to Grayson. We need to talk about the Martin Gala. I picked up your tux from the tailor. As they left the room, Celeste let out a shaky breath. The moment had passed, but Grayson's words lingered. He wanted to end his marriage. Not for her, he claimed, but because it was already over. Could she believe him? Or was history repeating itself? The next few days passed in a blur of tension and unspoken feelings. Celeste kept her distance, focusing on her work and speaking to Grayson only when necessary. He respected her boundaries, but she could feel his eyes following her, sense the words he wasn't saying. On Friday afternoon, Celeste was polishing silver in the kitchen when she heard raised voices from Grayson's study. Curious, she moved closer to the door, which was slightly ajar. "This isn't working anymore, Vivienne," Grayson was saying, his voice tired but determined. "What isn't working?" Vivienne replied, sounding more annoyed than upset. "Our marriage. This arrangement. Whatever you want to call it." There was a pause, then Vivienne laughed, a cold, calculating sound. "Is this about the maid?" Celeste froze, her heart pounding. "This is about us," Grayson said firmly. "About the fact that we haven't been a real couple in years." "Don't be dramatic," Vivienne dismissed. "We have an understanding. I don't question your late nights at the office. You don't question my shopping trips to Paris." "And that's enough for you?" Grayson asked. "It's worked for 5 years," Vivienne replied. "Why change now unless—" Her voice sharpened. "It is about her, isn't it? I've seen how you look at her." "This isn't about anyone else," Grayson insisted. "It's about me finally admitting that I want more than this performance we call a marriage." "How noble," Vivienne said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But let me remind you of something, darling. Our prenuptial agreement is very clear. If you leave me, you lose control of the company." Celeste's hand flew to her mouth. She hadn't known that. "The board would never allow that," Grayson argued. "The board doesn't know that my father's investment saved Vale Industries from bankruptcy 3 years ago," Vivienne shot back. "That was our private arrangement, remember? His money, my silence, your continued role as CEO." There was a long silence. "So think very carefully before you throw away everything you've built," Vivienne continued, her voice softer now, almost sympathetic. "All for what? Some romantic notion of true love with the help?" Celeste backed away from the door, her mind reeling. So that was why Grayson stayed. His company, his life's work, hung in the balance. And Vivienne knew it. She bumped into a kitchen stool, the noise loud in the quiet apartment. The voices in the study stopped. "We'll continue this discussion later," Vivienne said, her heels clicking toward the door. Celeste quickly busied herself with the silver, trying to look natural as Vivienne swept through the kitchen. The older woman paused, her cold eyes taking in Celeste's flushed face. "Miss Morgan," she said pleasantly, "the silver looks lovely." "Thank you, Mrs. Vale," Celeste replied, keeping her voice steady. Vivienne lingered, studying her. "You know, good help is so hard to find these days. I hope we can count on your discretion and loyalty." The threat beneath the polite words was unmistakable. "Of course, Mrs. Vale," Celeste said, meeting her gaze directly. "I'm very professional." Vivienne smiled, satisfied. "Excellent. I'll be out for the evening. Please make sure the guest bathroom is prepared for tomorrow's brunch." After Vivienne left, Celeste leaned against the counter, her hands trembling. The situation was even more complicated than she'd thought. Grayson wasn't just married. He was trapped in a business arrangement disguised as a marriage, with his entire career at stake. She needed to distance herself from this mess for her own sanity. Maybe it was time to look for another job after all. As she finished polishing the silver, she heard Grayson's footsteps approaching the kitchen. She tensed, not ready to face him after what she'd overheard. "Celeste," he said softly from the doorway. She kept her back to him, focusing on the task at hand. "Yes, Mr. Vale. I need to explain something." "There's nothing to explain," she replied, still not looking at him. "Your relationship with Mrs. Vale is none of my business." Grayson sighed. "You heard." Celeste finally turned to face him. "I wasn't eavesdropping, but yes, I heard enough." He looked tired, the weight of his situation visible in the lines around his eyes. "It's not as simple as I made it sound." "It never is," Celeste said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "There's always a reason why men like you can't leave their wives." Hurt flashed across Grayson's face. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Celeste challenged. "My mother spent years hearing excuses. I'll leave her when the kids are older. I'll leave her after this business deal. I'll leave her next year." But next year never came. "I'm not making excuses," Grayson insisted. "I'm trying to find a way out that doesn't destroy everything I've built." "And in the meantime," Celeste asked, "what am I supposed to be? Your secret? The woman who waits in the shadows while you figure things out? Grayson stepped closer, his eyes pleading. I would never ask that of you. I just need time to untangle this legal mess. How much time? Celeste pressed. A month? A year? 5 years? He didn't have an answer for that, and his silence said everything. That's what I thought, Celeste said quietly. Mr. Vale, I think it's best if I give my notice. 2 weeks should be enough time for you and Mrs. Vale to find a replacement. Celeste, please, Grayson said, reaching for her hand. Don't do this. She pulled away, the touch of his skin against hers too dangerous. It's already done. As she walked past him, head held high despite the ache in her heart, Grayson called after her. What if I told you she's already leaving me? Celeste stopped, not turning around. What? Vivian, Grayson said. She's been seeing someone else. A designer she met in Paris last year. That's why she's been so desperate to maintain appearances. She's protecting herself, too. Slowly, Celeste turned to face him. How do you know? I found messages on her phone, Grayson admitted. I confronted her last week, before our argument today. That's why she's threatening me with the company. She knows I have leverage, too. Celeste shook her head, trying to process this new information. So you're both cheating on each other? I haven't cheated, Grayson said firmly. Having feelings for you isn't the same as acting on them. I've respected your boundaries. It was true. Despite the tension between them, despite his confession that rainy night, he had never crossed the line. Why are you telling me this now? Celeste asked. Because I want you to know that this marriage is ending one way or another, Grayson said. Not because of you, but because it was never real to begin with, and I don't want you to leave because of a situation that's already changing. Celeste wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Part of her wanted to trust him, to believe that this time would be different, but the other part, the part that had watched her mother's heart break again and again, warned her to run. I need time to think, she said finally. Grayson nodded, relief washing over his face. Take all the time you need. Just don't give up on me yet. As Celeste gathered her things to leave for the day, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. Could she trust Grayson's promises? Or was she setting herself up for the same heartbreak her mother had endured? In the elevator, she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. One thing was clear. She was falling in love with Grayson Vale, and that terrified her more than anything. The weekend passed in a blur of doubt and indecision. Celeste threw herself into her schoolwork, trying to distract herself from thoughts of Grayson and his complicated marriage. By Monday morning, she still hadn't decided whether to keep her job or stick to her resignation. As she rode the elevator up to the Vale penthouse, she steeled herself for whatever the day might bring. The doors opened to an unusually quiet apartment. No sign of Vivian's designer heels or expensive perfume. No sound of Grayson's voice on a business call. "Hello?" Celeste called, setting down her purse. "Mr. Vale? Mrs. Vale?" No answer. She began her usual cleaning routine, starting with the living room. As she dusted the coffee table, she noticed a business card sitting prominently on top. It was from a divorce attorney with Grayson's name scrawled on the back. Celeste stared at it, her heart racing. Was this real? Was Grayson actually taking steps to end his marriage? The elevator chimed and Celeste quickly moved away from the coffee table. Grayson stepped out, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him in weeks. "Good morning," he said, smiling at her. "I hope you had a good weekend." "I did, thank you," Celeste replied cautiously. "Is Mrs. Vale home?" "No," Grayson said, his expression neutral. "She's in Paris. She'll be gone for the week." Celeste nodded, returning to her dusting. She could feel Grayson watching her, waiting for something. "I met with a lawyer this morning," he said finally, "about starting divorce proceedings." Celeste's hand stilled. "I saw the card. I left it there on purpose," Grayson admitted. "I wanted you to know I meant what I said." She turned to face him, still uncertain. "What about the company? Vivian's threats?" "I'm working on it," Grayson said. "My lawyer thinks we can negotiate. Vivian doesn't really want to run Vale Industries. She just wants the lifestyle it provides. If I can guarantee that, she might be willing to compromise." It sounded reasonable, but Celeste had heard promises before. "And if she doesn't compromise?" Grayson's expression turned serious. "Then I'll make a choice. And I'm starting to realize that some things are more important than a company, even one I built from nothing." The sincerity in his voice made Celeste's resolve waver. Could it be true? Was he really willing to risk everything? "I need to know something," she said quietly. "If I wasn't in the picture, if we had never met, would you still be ending your marriage?" Grayson didn't hesitate. "Yes. Meeting you didn't create these problems. It just made me finally face them, made me realize what I've been missing by settling for a marriage that exists only on paper. Celeste wanted to believe him. More than anything, she wanted to believe that this time was different, that Grayson wasn't just another man making empty promises. "I'm still giving my notice," she said finally. "Not because I don't believe you, but because I need to protect myself. I can't work here while all this is happening." Disappointment flickered across Grayson's face, but he nodded. "I understand." "But Celeste, yes? When this is over, when I'm free, may I call you? Not as your employer, but as a man who wants to know you better." The question hung in the air between them, full of possibility and risk. "Ask me again when it's over," Celeste said softly. "Ask me when you're free." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a door left slightly open, a chance that maybe, just maybe, their story wasn't ending, but just beginning. As Celeste continued with her work that day, she felt lighter somehow. She still didn't know if Grayson would follow through, if his marriage would really end. But for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps her story wouldn't be a repeat of her mother's after all. And in the quiet of the penthouse, with Vivian an ocean away and Grayson working in his study, Celeste began to hum again. Not her grandmother's old songs this time, but something newer, something that spoke of possibilities and second chances. 2 weeks passed quickly. True to her word, Celeste worked her notice period, maintaining a professional distance from Grayson, despite the growing tension between them. He respected her boundaries, never pushing for more than she was willing to give, but his eyes followed her around the penthouse, full of unspoken promises. Vivian remained in Paris, extending her trip with vague excuses about fashion shows and meetings. Grayson didn't seem surprised or concerned by her absence. If anything, he seemed relieved. On Celeste's last day, she arrived to find the penthouse filled with fresh flowers, not Vivian's usual stark white arrangements, but colorful blooms that reminded her of her grandmother's garden. "I thought the place could use some life," Grayson explained when he saw her surprised expression. "Do you like them?" "They're beautiful," Celeste admitted, touching a vibrant lily. "I have something for you," Grayson said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. "I found this behind my bookshelf." Celeste's breath caught as she opened the box. Inside was her grandmother's locket, the one she'd lost that stormy night weeks ago. "My locket," she whispered, her fingers trembling as she touched the worn silver. "I thought it was gone forever." "I found it when I was reorganizing my books," Grayson said, smiling. "I know how much it means to you." Celeste opened the locket, revealing the faded photo of her grandmother inside. Tears pricked at her eyes. "Thank you. This means everything to me." Grayson stepped closer, taking the locket from her hands. "May I?" Celeste nodded, turning around so he could fasten it around her neck. His fingers brushed against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. "There," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "Back where it belongs." She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "Grayson, I know," he said, stepping back respectfully. "Not yet." Celeste touched the locket at her throat, gathering her courage. "Have you heard from your lawyer?" "Yes," Grayson replied, his expression hopeful. "Vivian has agreed to meet next week to discuss terms. Her lawyer reached out to mine yesterday." "That's good news," Celeste said cautiously. "It is," Grayson agreed, "and I've been working on a solution for the company, a way to buy out her family's investment without losing control." It all sounded promising, but Celeste had learned to be wary of promises. "I hope it works out for you." "For us," Grayson corrected gently. "I'm doing this for us, Celeste." The word, us, hung in the air between them, full of possibility and danger. "There is no us yet," Celeste reminded him, though her heart argued otherwise. "Not yet," Grayson agreed. "But someday, I hope." As Celeste finished her final tasks around the penthouse, she felt Grayson's eyes following her, patient and full of hope. When the time came to leave, he walked her to the elevator. "This isn't goodbye," he said, his voice firm. "Just until next time." Celeste smiled, allowing herself one moment of hope. Until next time. As the elevator doors closed between them, Celeste touched the locket at her throat. Her grandmother had always said that true love doesn't end, it just changes form. Maybe the same was true for beginnings. Sometimes they didn't look like beginnings at all, but like endings that left doors open for something new. She didn't know if Grayson would follow through, if his marriage would really end, if they would ever have their chance. But for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her story would be different from her mother's after all. Maybe this time, Love would choose her. 2 months passed since Celeste left her position at the Vale penthouse. She found a new job cleaning offices in Midtown. Less pay, but regular hours that allowed her to focus on her business classes. Sometimes, walking home through Central Park, she would look up at the luxury high-rises and wonder which window belonged to Grayson. Was he still there? Had he really filed for divorce? Or had it all been empty promises? He hadn't contacted her, and she told herself that was a good thing. He was respecting her boundaries, giving her the space she'd asked for. Or maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe Vivian had convinced him to stay after all. It was better this way, she tried to convince herself. Clean break, no complications. But at night, alone in her small apartment, she would touch the silver locket around her neck and remember the way Grayson had looked at her, like she was the only real thing in his world. Snap out of it, Celeste muttered to herself as she unlocked her apartment door after a long day of classes and work. He's probably forgotten all about you by now. She flipped on the lights and froze. On her kitchen table sat a bouquet of fresh flowers, the same colorful mix Grayson had filled the penthouse with on her last day. Beside it was a small white envelope. Celeste's heart raced as she approached the table. How had these gotten here? Her landlady must have let someone in. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and pulled out a card. Some endings are just beginnings in disguise. The papers were filed today. When you're ready to talk, I'll be waiting. G. Celeste sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the card. He'd done it. He'd actually filed for divorce. She reached for her phone, then hesitated. Just because he'd filed didn't mean it was final. There could still be complications, negotiations, second thoughts. The phone rang in her hand, startling her. Unknown number. Hello? She answered cautiously. Celeste. Grayson's voice, warm and familiar. I hope the flowers weren't too much. Your landlady said it would be okay. You talked to Mrs. Jenkins? Celeste asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. I had to, I didn't have your address. He paused. I know I promised not to contact you until everything was settled, but today felt like a milestone worth sharing. Celeste clutched the phone tighter. You really filed the papers? This morning, Grayson confirmed. Vivian didn't contest it. In fact, she seemed almost relieved. Because of her designer friend in Paris, Celeste guessed. Exactly. Once she realized I knew about him, she was more willing to negotiate. Another pause. I'm not free yet. Legally, I mean. These things take time. But I've taken the first step. Celeste ran her fingers over the card, trying to sort through her conflicting emotions. Hope and caution battled within her. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. I've missed you, Grayson said softly. The penthouse feels empty without your humming. The simple honesty in his voice made her heart ache. I've missed you too, she admitted. Would you have dinner with me? He asked. Not at the penthouse. Somewhere neutral. Just to talk. Celeste hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but the cautious side, the side that remembered her mother's tears, held her back. Is that a good idea? While you're still technically married? Probably not, Grayson admitted with a low chuckle. But I'm tired of doing what's proper instead of what feels right. His words echoed in her mind, stirring something deep inside her. Hadn't she spent her whole life being careful, proper, restrained? One dinner, she agreed finally, just to talk. That's all I'm asking for, Grayson said, relief evident in his voice. How about Friday? There's a small Italian place on 9th Avenue. Private, quiet. Friday works, Celeste said, surprising herself with how eager she felt. Text me the details. After they hung up, Celeste sat looking at the flowers for a long time. Was she making a mistake? Or was this the beginning of something real? Only time would tell. The Italian restaurant was everything Grayson had promised. Small, intimate, tucked away on a quiet corner. Celeste arrived 15 minutes early, too nervous to wait in her apartment any longer. The hostess showed her to a corner table, partially hidden by a wine rack. Mr. Vale called ahead, she explained with a knowing smile. He said privacy was important. Celeste smoothed her dress, a simple navy blue that she'd splurged on after getting her tax refund. It wasn't designer like Vivian's clothes, but it made her feel beautiful, confident. She was checking her reflection in her spoon when Grayson appeared at the table. Celeste, he said, his voice warm with affection. You look stunning. He was different somehow, more relaxed. The weight of his secret life lifted from his shoulders. He wore a simple button-down shirt, no tie, looking more like the young man from that camping photo than the buttoned-up CEO. You look different, she observed as he sat across from her. Good different or bad different? He asked with a smile. Good, she decided. More you. Grayson's eyes crinkled at the corners. That's exactly how I feel. More me. Like I've been playing a role for so long I forgot who I really was. The waiter brought water and took their wine order. When he left, an awkward silence fell between them. So, Celeste said, fiddling with her napkin, how is everything with the divorce? Moving forward, Grayson replied. Vivian is being surprisingly reasonable. I think she's as ready for this to be over as I am. And the company? Her threats? Grayson's expression turned serious. That's been more complicated. Her father's investment does give her some leverage, but my lawyer thinks we can work out a settlement that lets me keep control of Vale Industries. What kind of settlement? Celeste asked. A very expensive one, Grayson admitted with a rueful smile, but worth it. The waiter returned with their wine and they ordered pasta for her, chicken for him. When they were alone again, Grayson leaned forward. Enough about my problems. Tell me about you. How's the new job, your classes? The genuine interest in his voice touched her. For the next hour, they talked about everything and nothing. Her business classes, his childhood dreams of being an architect, books they loved, music that moved them. It felt easy, natural, like they'd known each other forever instead of just a few months. I've never told anyone that story, Grayson said after sharing an embarrassing tale about his first business presentation. Not even Vivian. Why me? Celeste asked, genuinely curious. Grayson's expression softened. Because with you I don't feel like I need to be Grayson Vale, CEO. I can just be me. The simple honesty of his words touched something deep inside Celeste. How long had it been since someone had seen her, really seen her, not as a maid or a student or someone's daughter, but as herself? As they finished dessert, tiramisu shared between them, Grayson reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. I know it's complicated, he said softly. I know you have every reason to be cautious. But I want you to know that what I feel for you is real, Celeste. More real than anything in my life has been for a very long time. Celeste looked at their hands, so close but not quite touching. I'm scared, she admitted. Not just because of your situation, but because of what I feel when I'm with you. It's overwhelming. I know, Grayson said. It scares me too, in a good way. Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted between them. A barrier lifting, a door opening. Take me home, Celeste asked softly. Outside the restaurant, Grayson hailed a cab. They sat close in the back seat, not touching but acutely aware of each other. The city lights blurred past the windows as they headed toward Celeste's apartment in Harlem. When they arrived, Grayson walked her to her door. In the dim hallway of her building, they stood facing each other, neither quite ready to say goodnight. I had a wonderful time, Celeste said, her voice barely above a whisper. So did I, Grayson replied. He reached out, his fingers gently touching the locket at her throat. You're still wearing it. Always, Celeste said, her skin tingling where his fingers brushed against it. It reminds me of her, and now, of you too. Grayson's eyes darkened as he looked at her. Celeste, The sound of a door opening down the hall broke the moment. One of Celeste's neighbors emerged, giving them a curious glance as she passed. I should go, Grayson said, stepping back. But I'd like to see you again if that's what you want. It is, Celeste admitted, but slowly, okay? Until everything is settled. Grayson nodded, understanding in his eyes. Slowly, he agreed. Good night, Celeste. Good night, Grayson. As she closed her apartment door behind her, Celeste leaned against it, her heart racing. She was falling for him, had already fallen if she was honest with herself. But could she trust this feeling? Could she trust him? Time would tell. And for once in her life, she was willing to wait and see. Over the next few weeks, Celeste and Grayson built something new between them. Not quite a relationship, but more than friendship. They met for coffee on her lunch breaks, talked on the phone late into the night, went to small neighborhood restaurants where no one would recognize the famous CEO. Always in public, always careful, always mindful of the fact that legally he was still married. But with each meeting, each conversation, the connection between them deepened. Grayson kept her updated on the divorce proceedings, the negotiations, the paperwork, the slow crawl toward freedom. Vivian had returned from Paris and moved into their Hamptons house, effectively separating their lives. It's almost over, he told Celeste one evening as they walked through Central Park. My lawyer says we could have a settlement by the end of the month. And then? Celeste asked, her heart fluttering with both hope and fear. Grayson stopped walking, turning to face her. And then I want to start over, do things right, Caught you properly the way you deserve. The old-fashioned sentiment made Celeste smile. Caught me? Like in a Jane Austen novel. If that's what it takes, Grayson said, his eyes twinkling. I'll write you sonnets, send you flowers every day, stand outside your window with a boombox like in those 80s movies. Celeste laughed, the sound light and free. I don't need all that, just you. The real you. Grayson's expression softened. The real me has been waiting a lifetime to find you, Celeste Morgan. He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. It was a small gesture, innocent even, but in that moment it felt like a promise. As they continued their walk, hand in hand under the canopy of trees, Celeste allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, happy endings weren't just for fairy tales after all. The call came on a Tuesday evening, while Celeste was studying for her business economics final. Grayson's name flashed on her phone screen, and she answered with a smile. Hey you, she said, setting aside her textbook. I was just thinking about you, Celeste. Something in his voice made her sit up straighter. Something's happened. A cold dread settled in her stomach. What is it? Are you okay? Vivian is contesting the divorce, Grayson said, his voice tight with frustration. She's claiming infidelity. The word hung between them, heavy with accusation. But that's not true, Celeste said, confused. We never, not while you were together. I know that, Grayson assured her. But Vivian has hired a private investigator. They've been following us, taking pictures of our meetings. Celeste's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. It's a negotiation tactic, Grayson explained. She's trying to leverage more money, more shares in the company. My lawyer says she doesn't really want to go public with this. It would hurt her image as much as mine. So what happens now? Grayson sighed heavily. More negotiations, more delays, and we need to be careful about being seen together. The words felt like a physical blow. After weeks of cautious hope, of building something real between them, they were back to hiding. I'm sorry, Celeste, Grayson said, the pain evident in his voice. This isn't what I wanted. I promised you wouldn't be a secret, and now... It's okay, Celeste interrupted, though it wasn't. Not really. It's temporary, right? Just until things are settled. Yes, Grayson said firmly. Just temporary. I'm not giving up, Celeste. Not on us. After they hung up, Celeste stared at her phone for a long time. This was exactly what she'd feared, being pulled into the messy, complicated world of Grayson's marriage, becoming the other woman in the eyes of the world, just like her mother had been. But there was a difference, she reminded herself. Grayson was actually leaving his wife. The divorce was real, even if it was now contested, and what they felt for each other, that was real too. Wasn't it worth fighting for? Days turned into weeks. Celeste threw herself into her finals, grateful for the distraction. Grayson called every night, updating her on the legal battles, reassuring her that it would all be over soon. But soon kept stretching further into the future. One rainy afternoon, Celeste was leaving her last class when she spotted a sleek black car idling at the curb. The back door opened, and Vivienne Vale stepped out, elegant as ever in a designer trench coat. Ms. Morgan, she called, her voice carrying across the wet sidewalk. May I have a word? Celeste froze. Her textbooks clutched to her chest like a shield. Every instinct told her to walk away, to avoid this confrontation. But running wouldn't solve anything. Taking a deep breath, she approached the car. Mrs. Vale, please. Vivian gestured to the car's interior. It's pouring. Let's talk inside. Against her better judgment, Celeste slid into the back seat. The door closed behind her, sealing them in plush leather privacy. I'll get right to the point, Vivian said, crossing her legs elegantly. I know about you and Grayson. There's nothing to know, Celeste replied evenly. Nothing happened while I worked for you. Vivian waved a dismissive hand. Semantics. The fact is, you're the reason my husband wants to end our marriage. No, Celeste said firmly. Your marriage was over long before I came into the picture. You know that better than anyone. Something flickered in Vivienne's eyes, surprise perhaps at Celeste's directness. Fair enough, she conceded. But the fact remains that you are complicating matters. How so? Vivienne reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These are the photos my investigator took, you and Grayson looking very intimate. She slid out several glossy photographs, Celeste and Grayson walking in Central Park, hands clasped, sitting close at a cafe table, standing outside her apartment, his hand on her cheek. There's nothing scandalous here, Celeste said, pushing the photos away. We're not doing anything wrong. Perhaps not technically, Vivian agreed. But optics matter, Ms. Morgan. What would the Board of Vale Industries think if these went public? What would your classmates think? Your professors? The threat hung in the air between them. What do you want, Mrs. Vale? Celeste asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I want you to disappear from Grayson's life, Vivian said simply. Just until our divorce is settled. A few months, that's all. And if I don't? Vivian's smile was cold. Then these photos go to the board, to the press, to your school. Grayson might survive the scandal, men usually do. But you, the maid who seduced her married employer, your reputation would never recover. Celeste's hands trembled in her lap. This is blackmail. This is business, Vivian corrected. And unlike my husband, I'm not burdened by sentimentality. She slid a check across the seat. Consider this compensation for your inconvenience. Enough to finish your degree. Start that business you dream about. Celeste stared at the check, the amount making her dizzy. You think you can buy me off? Everyone has a price, Miss Morgan, Vivian said, her voice almost kind. The question is whether you're willing to pay yours and Grayson's if you refuse. The car slowed to a stop. They had circled back to the college. Think about it, Vivian said, as the driver opened Celeste's door. I'll need your answer by tomorrow. Celeste stepped out into the rain, the manila envelope clutched in her hand. As the car pulled away, she stood there, water soaking through her clothes, her mind reeling. What was she supposed to do now? Celeste paced her small apartment, the check and photos spread out on her kitchen table. The amount was staggering, enough to pay off her student loans, enough to start the small business she'd dreamed about since her grandmother first taught her about profit margins and customer service. All she had to do was walk away from Grayson. Just for a few months, Vivian had said, until the divorce was settled. But Celeste wasn't naive. If she disappeared now at the first sign of trouble, would Grayson wait for her? Or would he assume she'd been like everyone else in his life, there for what he could give her, not for who he really was? Her phone rang. Grayson's ringtone. She stared at it, torn between answering and letting it go to voicemail. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to ignore him. Hey, she answered, trying to keep her voice normal. Celeste, Grayson said, sounding relieved. I've been trying to reach you all afternoon. Sorry, she said. I had finals and then... She trailed off, unsure how to tell him about Vivian's visit. Is everything okay? He asked, concern evident in his voice. You sound strange. Celeste took a deep breath. Vivian came to see me today. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What did she want? Grayson finally asked, his voice tight. She had photos of us together. Nothing scandalous, just us. Talking, walking, holding hands. Celeste swallowed hard. She threatened to make them public if I didn't disappear from your life for a while. She what? Grayson's voice rose in anger. That's it. This game she's playing stops now. Grayson, wait, Celeste said quickly. She's serious. She's willing to go to the board, to the press. Let her, Grayson said fiercely. I have nothing to hide. We've done nothing wrong. She also offered me money, Celeste admitted. A lot of money. Another silence, this one heavier. And? Grayson finally asked, his voice carefully neutral. And I told her I needed to think about it, Celeste said honestly. I see. The hurt in those two simple words was palpable. Not because I want to leave you, Celeste hurried to explain, but because I needed to talk to you first. This affects both of us, Grayson. Relief washed through his voice. For a moment there, I thought, I know what you thought, Celeste interrupted gently. But I'm not Vivian. I don't see relationships as business transactions. No, Grayson agreed softly. You're nothing like her. That's why I love you. The words, spoken so simply, so honestly, made Celeste's heart skip a beat. It was the first time either of them had said it. Grayson, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. I mean it, he said. I love you, Celeste Morgan, and I'm not letting Vivian or anyone else come between us. In that moment, Celeste knew what she had to do. I need to see you, she said, not on the phone, in person. I'll come to you, Grayson said immediately. Give me 20 minutes. As she hung up, Celeste looked at the check on her table. Such a simple thing, a piece of paper with numbers on it, but it represented everything she'd ever wanted. Financial security, a chance to start her business, freedom from the struggle she'd known her whole life. Yet, it also represented something else, the belief that everyone could be bought. That love was just another transaction. With steady hands, Celeste picked up the check and tore it in half, then quarters, then smaller pieces until it was nothing but confetti on her kitchen table. Some things weren't for sale. Her heart was one of them. True to his word, Grayson arrived at her apartment 20 minutes later, his hair damp from the rain, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, as soon as she opened the door. Celeste nodded, stepping back to let him in. "I'm better now." Grayson's gaze fell on the torn pieces of check and scattered photos on her kitchen table. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You turned her down," he said, a note of wonder in his voice. "Some things are worth more than money," Celeste said simply. Grayson crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. "I don't deserve you," he murmured against her hair. "Probably not," Celeste agreed with a small laugh. "But you're stuck with me anyway." He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. "I'm going to fix this, Celeste. I'm going to end this war with Vivian once and for all." "How?" Celeste asked, worried. "She seems determined to drag this out as long as possible." "By giving her what she really wants," Grayson said. "Not me, not even the company, but the lifestyle, the status, the social position of being Mrs. Vale." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm prepared to be very generous in the settlement," Grayson explained. "More generous than my lawyers think is wise. But if it means ending this limbo we're in, it's worth it." Celeste touched his face gently. "Are you sure? That's your life's work." "It's just money," Grayson said, covering her hand with his, "and the company will recover. What matters is that we can start building our life together, openly, honestly." The simplicity of his priorities, her over his fortune, their future over his past, touched Celeste deeply. This wasn't her mother's story repeating itself. This was something new, something real. "I love you too," she said softly, finally responding to his earlier declaration. "I think I have since that night in the rain when you told me what was in your heart." Grayson's eyes darkened as he leaned down to kiss her, their first real kiss, not stolen or hurried but deliberate and full of promise. His lips were gentle against hers, asking rather than demanding, offering rather than taking. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and smiling, Celeste felt something settle inside her, a certainty, a peace she hadn't known before. Whatever came next, Vivian's threats, divorce battles, public opinion, they would face it together. Not as employer and employee, not as CEO and maid, but as equals, as partners. As Grayson held her close in her tiny kitchen, the rain tapping gently against the windows, Celeste finally understood what her grandmother had meant about true love. It wasn't just about grand gestures or passionate words. It was about choosing each other day after day, about seeing past titles and positions to the person underneath, about standing together against whatever the world threw at you. And for the first time in her life, Celeste wasn't afraid of falling, because she knew without doubt that Grayson would be there to catch her. The morning headlines hit like a thunderclap. Vale Industries, CEO in divorce scandal. Power couple splits. Vivian Vale files for divorce. Fashion icon Vivian Vale leaves billionaire husband. Celeste stared at the newspaper stand outside her apartment building, her heart pounding. There it was, splashed across the front page of the New York Post. Grayson and Vivian's divorce, now public knowledge. But something was wrong. The headlines all said Vivian had filed for divorce, not Grayson. And there was no mention of Celeste, or any other woman. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "Grayson, have you seen the papers?" he asked as soon as she answered. "I'm looking at them right now," Celeste replied, still confused. "Grayson, what's going on? They're saying Vivian filed for divorce, not you." "She did," Grayson said, sounding as surprised as she felt. "My lawyer called this morning. Vivian's attorneys filed the papers yesterday afternoon. They're not contesting anything anymore. In fact, they're asking for an expedited process." "I don't understand," Celeste said, turning away from the curious stares of passers-by. "What changed?" "I don't know," Grayson admitted. "But my lawyer thinks there's more to the story. He's trying to find out what's going on." "What does this mean for us?" Celeste asked, the question that mattered most to her. "It means it's almost over," Grayson said, relief evident in his voice. "And if Vivian is the one filing, there won't be any scandal about you and me. She's protecting her own image." After they hung up, Celeste bought a copy of each newspaper, scanning the articles for any mention of herself. There was nothing, not even a hint of infidelity or a third party. According to the papers, Vivian and Grayson had grown apart and were separating amicably. It was as if Vivian's threats, the private investigator, the photos, none of it had ever happened. Something didn't add up. That evening, Celeste was finishing dinner when her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment she worried it might be Vivian again, or worse, reporters who had somehow connected her to Grayson. She peeked through the peephole and was surprised to see Tanya standing there, practically bouncing with excitement. "You're not going to believe what I just heard," Tanya burst out as soon as Celeste opened the door. "It's all over page 6. "What is?" Celeste asked, ushering her friend inside. Tanya pulled out her phone, scrolling frantically. "Here, look at this." She thrust the phone into Celeste's hands. On the screen was a gossip blog with a blurry photo of Vivienne Vale leaving a hotel in Paris, hand in hand with a tall, dark-haired man. The headline read, "Vivienne Vale's secret lover revealed, fashion icon leaving CEO husband for European designer." "Oh my God," Celeste whispered, scanning the article. According to the gossip site, Vivienne had been seeing renowned French designer Jean-Luc Renault for over a year. They had met at Paris Fashion Week and carried on a discreet affair while Vivienne maintained her marriage to Grayson for appearance's sake. "She's been cheating on him this whole time," Tanya exclaimed. "And now she's leaving him for her lover. It's like something out of a soap opera." Celeste sank onto her couch, trying to process this information. Grayson had mentioned Vivienne was seeing someone in Paris, but she hadn't realized how serious it was. Serious enough for Vivienne to file for divorce herself, apparently. "Wait," Tanya said, suddenly suspicious. "You don't seem very surprised. Did you know about this?" "Not exactly," Celeste hedged. "Grayson mentioned she was seeing someone, but not that it was this serious." Tanya's eyes widened. "Grayson? Since when are you on a first-name basis with your ex-boss?" Her expression suddenly cleared. "Oh my God, the complicated thing you wouldn't tell me about." "It was him, wasn't it?" Celeste sighed. There was no point hiding it now. "Nothing happened while I worked for them," she insisted. "But after I left, yes, we've been seeing each other. Quietly." Tanya let out a squeal that probably alarmed the neighbors. "I knew it. The way he looked at you that day in the cafe, I knew something was going on." "It's complicated," Celeste said, an understatement if ever there was one. "But now it's not," Tanya pointed out, gesturing to her phone. "If Vivienne's the one who was cheating, and she's filing for divorce to be with her designer boyfriend, then you and Grayson are in the clear. No scandal, no blame, nothing." It was true, Celeste realized. With Vivienne casting herself as the one leaving the marriage, and for another man, there would be no finger-pointing at Celeste, no photos leaked to the press, no damage to Grayson's reputation or her own. It was almost too good to be true. "Have you talked to him?" Tanya asked. "Does he know about this?" Before Celeste could answer, her phone rang. Grayson again. "I need to take this," she told Tanya, who made an exaggerated go-ahead gesture. "Grayson," Celeste answered, moving to the kitchen for a bit of privacy. "Have you seen the gossip sites?" he asked without preamble. "Tanya just showed me," Celeste confirmed. "So it's true? About Vivienne and this designer?" "Apparently," Grayson said, sounding bemused. "My lawyer just got off the phone with hers. Vivienne wants a clean break. No messy allegations, no dragged-out negotiations. She's willing to accept a settlement that's more than fair to both of us." "Why the sudden change?" Celeste wondered. "From what I understand, her designer friend gave her an ultimatum," Grayson explained. "He was tired of being the secret, wanted to go public with their relationship. Ironic, isn't it?" It was more than ironic. It was almost poetic justice. The woman who had threatened to expose Celeste as the other woman was herself involved in an affair. The woman who had tried to buy Celeste's silence was now seeking a quick, quiet divorce to pursue her own happiness. "So what happens now?" Celeste asked. "Now we let the lawyers handle the paperwork," Grayson said, "and then when it's final..." He paused. "Celeste, when this is over, I want to do this right. No more hiding, no more secrets. I want the world to know how I feel about you." Tanya, who had crept close enough to overhear, gave Celeste an enthusiastic thumbs up. "I want that too," Celeste admitted, smiling despite herself. After they hung up, Tanya grabbed Celeste's hands. "This is like a movie. The evil wife was the one cheating all along, and now you and Grayson can be together without any scandal." "It's not that simple," Celeste cautioned, though her heart was lighter than it had been in months. "There's still the divorce to get through and Grayson's company to consider." "Details," Tanya dismissed with a wave of her hand. "The point is, your happily ever after just got a whole lot closer." For once, Celeste allowed herself to believe that might actually be true. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal paperwork, media speculation, and cautious hope. True to her word, Vivienne pushed for a quick, amicable divorce. The business press buzzed with rumors about the settlement, but the personal details remained private. Celeste and Grayson continued to see each other discreetly, mindful that until the divorce was final, Appearances still mattered. But there was a new lightness between them, a certainty that hadn't been there before. The tabloids had a field day with Vivienne's new relationship, splashing photos of her and Jean-Luc across their pages. She seemed unbothered by the attention, even granting a few carefully worded interviews where she spoke of growing apart from Grayson and finding a new direction in her life. There was never any mention of Celeste, no leaked photos, no veiled accusations. It was as if Vivienne had forgotten her threats entirely, too consumed with her own new beginning to worry about the past. One rainy afternoon, Celeste was leaving her business economics class when she spotted a familiar figure waiting under the shelter of the building's awning. Grayson stood there, no umbrella, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, pleasantly surprised. "I wanted to tell you in person," Grayson said, his eyes bright with something like joy. "It's done. The judge signed the papers this morning. I'm officially divorced." Celeste's heart skipped a beat. "Really? It's over?" "Completely over," Grayson confirmed. "Vivienne got the Hamptons house and a very generous settlement. I kept control of Vale Industries. Clean break, just like we wanted." The rain fell harder around them, but neither seemed to notice. "So what now?" Celeste asked, hardly daring to believe this moment had finally arrived. Grayson took her hands in his. "Now I get to do what I've been waiting to do for months. Celeste Morgan, would you have dinner with me tonight? A real date. No hiding, no looking over our shoulders. Just us." The simple request, so ordinary for most couples, so monumental for them, brought tears to Celeste's eyes. "Yes," she said, squeezing his hands. "I'd love that." Grayson's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "I'll pick you up at 7. "I'll be ready," Celeste promised. As Grayson walked her to the subway, his hand holding hers openly, proudly, Celeste felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since she'd met him, there were no secrets between them, no barriers, no shadows, just two people, walking side by side in the rain, ready to begin something new. The restaurant Grayson chose for their first official date was not what Celeste expected. Instead of one of Manhattan's exclusive fine dining establishments, he took her to a small family-owned Italian place in Brooklyn, cozy, warm, with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. "This is perfect," Celeste said as they were seated at a corner table. "But I'm surprised. I thought you'd pick somewhere fancier." Grayson shook his head. "I've had enough of that world. The appearances, the networking, the being seen at the right places. This is real." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Like us." Throughout dinner they talked and laughed, making plans now that they could finally look to the future. Celeste told him about her business idea, a staffing agency that would train and place household workers with fair wages and benefits, inspired by her grandmother's experience. "I want to help people like me find good jobs with employers who respect them," she explained. "My grandmother worked for the same family for 40 years, but she never had health insurance or retirement benefits." "It's brilliant," Grayson said, his admiration evident. "Have you thought about startup costs, office space?" "I've been working on a business plan for my final project," Celeste admitted. "But it's still just a dream at this point. I need to finish my degree first, save up some capital." "I could help," Grayson offered. "Not just with money, but with connections, mentorship." Celeste hesitated. "I don't want to take advantage of our relationship." "It's not taking advantage," Grayson assured her. "It's partnering. That's what people who love each other do. They support each other's dreams." The simple way he spoke of love, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, warmed Celeste from within. "Speaking of dreams," Grayson continued, suddenly looking a bit nervous, "I've been thinking about making some changes in my life too." "What kind of changes?" Celeste asked, curious. "I've been in that penthouse for 6 years," Grayson said. "It never really felt like home, more like a showpiece Vivienne designed for magazines. I want something different now, something that feels real, lived in." "Are you moving?" "I'm looking at places," Grayson confirmed. "Smaller, cozier, maybe in Brooklyn." He hesitated, then added, "Somewhere we could build a life together eventually, if that's what you want too." The implication, a future together, a home they would share, made Celeste's heart race. "That sounds wonderful," she said softly. "But I don't want to rush. We have time now." Grayson nodded, understanding in his eyes. "All the time in the world." After dinner, they walked through the neighborhood hand in hand, window shopping and talking about everything and nothing. The easy comfort between them felt like a gift after months of tension and uncertainty. When they reached Celeste's apartment building, Grayson pulled her close under the awning. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For believing in me, for waiting, for seeing the real me when everyone else just saw the CEO." Celeste touched his face gently. "Thank you for being worth the wait." Their kiss was sweet, unhurried, full of promise. No more stolen moments, no more looking over their shoulders. Just two people in love, standing in the light. "Good night, Celeste," Grayson whispered against her lips. "Good night, Grayson." As she watched him walk away, Celeste touched the locket at her throat, her grandmother's legacy, now intertwined with memories of Grayson. For the first time in her life, she understood what her grandmother had meant about true love. It wasn't always easy or simple. Sometimes it came at the wrong time, in the wrong place, with seemingly insurmountable obstacles. But when it was real, when it was honest and deep and true, it was worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth believing in. 6 months later, Celeste stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment, adjusting the simple blue dress she'd chosen for tonight's dinner. Her fingers reached automatically for her grandmother's locket, the familiar weight comforting against her skin. So much had changed in half a year. She had graduated with her business degree, started working on her staffing agency with Grayson's support, moved into a nicer apartment in a safer neighborhood, and through it all, her relationship with Grayson had deepened, growing stronger with each passing day. They had taken things slowly as she'd wanted, no rushing into living together, no hasty decisions fueled by the relief of finally being able to be together openly. Instead, they built a foundation, honest conversations, shared experiences, learning each other's habits and quirks and dreams. The doorbell rang, and Celeste gave herself one last look in the mirror before going to answer it. Grayson stood there, as handsome as ever in a simple button-down shirt and slacks, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "These reminded me of the ones in the penthouse, that last day you worked there," he explained, handing them to her. "How do you remember?" "Of course I do," Celeste said, smiling at the memory. "That was the day you returned my locket." Grayson's eyes softened. "I found it behind the bookshelf. I kept it safe until I could give it back to you." "You've always been good at that," Celeste said, reaching up to kiss him, keeping things safe. As she put the flowers in water, Grayson moved around her kitchen with the ease of familiarity. 6 months of dinners and breakfasts and late-night conversations had made him as comfortable in her space as she was in his. "So," Celeste said as they left her apartment, "where are we going tonight? You've been very mysterious about this dinner." "It's a surprise," Grayson replied, his eyes twinkling, "but I think you'll like it." The car he'd arranged took them not to a restaurant, but to Brooklyn Heights, stopping in front of a charming brownstone on a tree-lined street. Lights glowed warmly in the windows, and flowers bloomed in window boxes. "What is this place?" Celeste asked, confused. Grayson took her hand, helping her out of the car. "Remember when I said I was looking for a new home? Somewhere that felt real, lived in." Understanding dawned. "This is it? This is your new place?" "Come see," Grayson said, leading her up the steps. He unlocked the door and ushered her inside. The interior was warm and inviting, hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, a fireplace in the living room. It wasn't as grand as the penthouse, but it had character, soul. "It's beautiful," Celeste said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "When did you buy it?" "The closing was last week," Grayson said, watching her reaction carefully. "I wanted to surprise you." "Well, it worked," Celeste laughed. "I had no idea." Grayson led her through the house, showing her each room, the kitchen with its farmhouse sink, the study with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the master bedroom with its bay window overlooking the back garden. "There's one more room I want to show you," he said, leading her to a smaller room at the end of the hallway. He opened the door to reveal an empty space, freshly painted in a soft cream color, with large windows letting in the evening light. "What's this room for?" Celeste asked. Grayson took a deep breath. "That depends on you." "On me?" He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I bought this house because it felt like a place where I could build a real life, a happy life. But I don't want to live here alone, Celeste." Her heart began to race as she realized what he was saying. "This room could be your home office, for your staffing agency," Grayson continued. "Or it could be something else entirely, someday. A nursery maybe, whatever we want it to be, together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not unlike the one he'd given her with her locket all those months ago. But this one held something very different. As he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring, Grayson sank to one knee. "Celeste Morgan, I love you more than I have words for. You saw me, the real me, when I was hiding from myself. You gave me the courage to change my life, to reach for something real and true. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Celeste's eyes, happy tears that spilled down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Grayson, I'll marry you." His hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he was standing, pulling her into his arms, his kiss full of joy and promise and forever. Later, as they sat on the window seat in what would be their bedroom, sharing a bottle of champagne and making plans for their future, a sudden rainstorm broke over Brooklyn. The sound of rain against the windows reminded Celeste of that night in the penthouse when everything had changed between them. "Remember that first storm?" she asked, leaning against Grayson's shoulder. "When you told me how you felt?" "How could I forget?" Grayson said, his arm tightening around her. "I was terrified you'd run out the door and never come back." "I almost did," Celeste admitted. "I was so afraid of being like my mother, loving someone who would never choose me. But I did choose you," Grayson said softly. "Every day since then, I've chosen you." "And I've chosen you," Celeste replied, turning to face him. "The real you, not the CEO or the billionaire or any of those titles. Just Grayson." He touched the locket at her throat, his fingers gentle. "Your grandmother would be proud of you, you know, for following your heart but also staying true to yourself." "I think she would have liked you," Celeste said, smiling at the thought. "She always said, true love doesn't end, it just changes form." "I like that," Grayson murmured, pulling her closer. "And I plan to love you in every form, through every change, for the rest of our lives." As the rain fell harder outside, they stayed wrapped in each other's arms, planning their future in whispers and laughs and kisses. A future built not on secrets or appearances or what others thought, but on something much stronger: truth, respect, and a love that had survived every test. 3 months later, on a bright autumn day, Celeste stood at the back of a small chapel, her simple white dress flowing around her. Through the open doors she could see their guests, a small gathering of friends, Grayson's trusted colleagues, her classmates and professors. No elaborate society wedding for them, no photographers from glossy magazines, no corporate politics disguised as celebration, just the people who mattered, gathered to witness their promises to each other. Tanya stood beside her, serving as her maid of honor, fussing with Celeste's veil. "I still can't believe this is happening," she whispered excitedly. "My best friend marrying Grayson Vale." "Just Grayson," Celeste corrected gently. "That's who I'm marrying. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just the man." Tanya squeezed her hand. "And he's marrying an amazing woman. Your grandmother would be so proud." Celeste touched the locket at her throat, her something old for the wedding day. "I think she is proud, wherever she is." The music changed, signaling it was time. Tanya gave her one last hug before starting down the aisle. And then Celeste was walking, her eyes fixed on Grayson waiting for her at the altar. He looked at her not with the polite appreciation men often gave beautiful women, but with wonder, with reverence, with a love so deep it transformed his face. As she reached him, he took her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "So do you," she whispered back, making him smile. The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Grayson kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," the minister announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Vale." But as they turned to face their guests, Grayson leaned close to her ear. "Mr. Vale and Ms. Morgan Vale," he corrected softly, "because you are your own person and always will be." The small gesture, his recognition of her independence, her identity, filled Celeste's heart to bursting. This was what love looked like, not possession or control, but respect and support and seeing each other clearly. At the reception, held in the garden of their Brooklyn brownstone, Grayson clinked his glass for a toast. The gathered guests fell silent, expectant. "I want to thank you all for being here today," he began. "For those who don't know our story, Celeste and I met when she was working as a maid in my penthouse." A murmur of surprise rippled through the guests who hadn't known this detail. "I was living what looked like the perfect life on paper," Grayson continued, "but inside I was lonely, lost, trapped in a marriage that existed only for appearances." He looked at Celeste, his eyes soft with love. "And then this amazing woman came into my life. She noticed things others missed. She listened, she cared, and most importantly, she saw the real me beneath all the titles and trappings." Grayson raised his glass higher. "To my wife, Celeste, Who taught me that the heart I hid for so long was worth showing to the world? To Celeste, the guests echoed, raising their glasses. As the celebration continued around them, Grayson pulled Celeste onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. The music swelled, not some trendy pop song, but an old gospel tune, the kind her grandmother used to hum while she worked. "How did you know?" Celeste asked, surprised by the choice. "I remembered you humming it that first day when I really saw you for the first time," Grayson explained. "I asked Tanya to help me find the right song." Tears pricked at Celeste's eyes as they swayed together, surrounded by the people they loved. This man who had once seemed so far above her, so untouchable, had noticed even the smallest details about her from the very beginning. "I love you," she whispered against his shoulder. "And I love you," he replied, "more than I'll ever have words for." Later that evening, as the reception wound down and the last guests began to leave, a sudden autumn shower swept through Brooklyn. The remaining guests hurried inside or under tents, laughing at the unexpected weather. But Celeste and Grayson remained on the dance floor, rain dampening their wedding clothes, neither making any move to seek shelter. "We should probably go inside," Grayson said, though he made no move to let her go. "Why?" Celeste asked, tilting her face up to the rain. "Some of our best moments have happened in the rain." Grayson laughed, pulling her closer. "That's true. That first storm in the penthouse, the day the divorce was final, and now our wedding day. See? It's like the universe is giving us its blessing." As their guests watched from the shelter of the house, Grayson Vale and Celeste Morgan Vale danced in the rain on their wedding day, unconcerned about wet clothes or ruined hairstyles. All that mattered was this moment, this love, this new beginning. For Celeste, who had once been invisible in the Vale penthouse, and Grayson, who had hidden his true self behind wealth and status, the rain was a reminder of how far they had come. From employer and employee, from married man and cautious woman to husband and wife, equals in love and life. No more secrets, no more hiding, no more shame. Just two people walking side by side through whatever weather life might bring. Together. The end.